You want to animate that? Let's do it. I think I'll use the front view for this just so I can see the squash and stretch controls. This rig's pretty cool because not only do you have that squash and stretch attribute, but you also have this little red thing over here. When you rotate it, it takes the squash and stretch controls with it. So it's pretty sweet whenever you're animating a bouncing ball. You don't get any weird deformations. One thing I notice a lot of students do too, they like to throw the ball really high up. That's kind of odd, only because when you're bouncing, by the time you get towards the end of your bounces, you're already by like the edge of the frame, so they just try to like make the ball stop here. But really, you need a lot more time for the ball to roll to a stop. So you don't really have to go that high. I'm going to turn on the film gate just so I can see where my actual borders are for the camera. Maybe I'll drop this down by halfway. So we're here. And my workflow is kind of weird. It's a mix between pose to pose and straight ahead. And I like to keep things in Spline just so that I can see how Maya is trying to interpolate all this data. Okay, so we know the ball's going to fall from this area. So the next key needs to be the down pose. For me, I like to animate on 2s, 4s, and 8s because I feel like it's easy to add frames and take away frames while doing that instead of just picking arbitrary numbers. So for the first bounce, I think 8 frames feels good. So I'm going to go 8 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Down. And sometimes I like to turn on the arc tracker too. I'm going to use the one from ANIM because I'm not too happy with the one that Maya gives you. If you have your thing set to animation up here, you go to visualize, create editable motion trail. You get this thing, and it's okay, I guess, but when you start adding stuff, like this is somewhat helpful, I guess. Even if I were to just scrub the timeline, it doesn't update at all, and it's super annoying unless you click on it and wiggle it around. Counterproductive. And we're just going to use the one from ANIM because when I use the graph editor here, it will also update in real time, which is pretty sweet. Let's go back to here, down. Like I said before, I'm not too concerned about the spacing right now. I just want the up and downs. And if it's going through the ground plane or it's not too high as I like it, I can always fix it later. Okay, so now that I hit the ground in 8 frames, I feel like every bounce afterwards should be less and less and less. So instead of going up in 8 frames, I'm actually going to go up in 7 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to go up and to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Down. Now we go 1 frame less. So 6 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I probably should make this go higher, like that. Okay, now in 5 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 4 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4. Up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down. 3 frames. 1, 2, 3. Up. 1, 2, 3. Down. 2 frames. 1, 2. Up. 1, 2. Down. And now we start getting into dribble territory. 1 frame up. 1 frame down. 1 frame up. 1 frame down. 1 frame up. 1 frame down. So now the bounces are done. Now it just needs to roll to a stop. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'll go half a second, 12 frames, and I'll just scoot it over just to see. And now if we hit play, we hide the controllers first. It looks like utter garbage, and that's kind of the point. We're blocking in the main components of a bouncing ball, the up and downs. So now we can go clean stuff up. I'm going to open up the graph editor here, and let's look at the translate X. That's going to be our left and right motion. I'm going to grab this Bezier handle. Right now it's flat, and it's saying that it should be easing, as in slowly accelerating before it picks up speed. And that doesn't make sense. When the ball's up in the air like this, I like to assume that it's already coming from a bounce outside of the camera. We're just capturing it here on frame 1. So it's already in motion. We're going to grab that Bezier handle and we're going to point it in the direction of the key over here to show that there's some acceleration happening, like so. And then this part, I think I want to, it's happening way too fast. 12 frames is too quick to get from here to here. So I'm going to kick it out maybe another 12 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Another half second just to see. Probably need more time, so let's go another 12 maybe? Why not? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Move it over here. That might be too long, so we'll just start chunking it down on 2s and 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that feel good? Doesn't feel too bad. Yeah, we'll just leave it like that for now. We'll get back to it later. I just wanted to roughen that left and right motion. And now we go clean this part up. So here, on all the downs, I don't want to go through the ground plane, this imaginary ground plane. I like to think that wherever this master controller is should be the ground plane. So anytime that there's a key that's going past 0, I'm just going to select it all, hit 0, hit up here, and now they're zeroed out. And then if I have any weird keys that are going down here, I'll just bring them back up and downs, done. What does that look like? Just as bad. That's okay. We roughed in how it's supposed to bounce. I just want to check the apexes here. So if this is the highest point, there's no real right or wrong. I think when it comes to weight, if it's a heavier object, maybe this is going to be a lot lower and you're not going to have a lot of these. And if it's a lighter ball, you might have a higher bounce. But because it's a volleyball, it has a lot more mass to it. So we're just going to bring it down half-ish, which means every time it comes up, it's going to go down another half-ish from the previous apex. So we're just going to move these a bit. Down here are the dribble frames, so these can be tighter. The one thing we're also missing is rotation, because right now it's just completely locked. I will go to this control up here. I'm not going to do it on the main moving control. I'm actually going to do it on the secondary control up here. This is the rotation only. So I'll set a key on frame 1. I'll go back to frame 69. I'll set a key there. And then I'll even go to frame 101 and set a key there. I just want to match the rotations and the translates on top of one another. It's a good workflow for me, so I don't have keys just all over the place. I'm kind of locking down values on specific times on other controls. So for the ball rotate, we're rotating in Z. Cool. I'm going to pose it just a little bit because I don't want it to be completely flat. And then when we get here, I'm going to just rotate it a ton. And down here, I'm just going to copy the previous rotation and paste it there, and then scoot it down a bit so I can create that ease out. These Bezier handles are looking kind of odd, so I'll just select it and hit the auto tangent button. The spacing feels a little slow here, so I think I'll grab this stuff and just move it down even more. Yeah, and I think down here as well, I'll scoot that down. Again, this isn't supposed to be super perfect right now. We're just blocking stuff in. Cool. So I think we'll focus on the first 69 frames, and then we'll work on the ending later. I want to get some squash and stretch in there, and I also want to start favoring the keys on the up and downs so that we have some ease in and ease out. At the moment, this hang time kind of makes sense, but the thing with Maya is that if your apex is like this, you can't just accept the fact that there's some ease because the Bezier handle is flat. It's only really easing for like the first 2 frames, and then it becomes even spacing throughout this middle section. Not only that, at the very bottom here, the ball is actually slowing down before it hits the ground, which doesn't make sense. Gravity is pushing the ball down, so it should be accelerating towards the ground and then bounce afterwards. So let's fix that. I'm not a fan of weighted tangents, honestly. I like to stay non-weighted You can change that over here under curves and switch to weighted tangent, but I really don't like doing this because every time I have to edit a curve when using weighted tangents, it seems to always just blow up a lot of things. And I'd rather force the computer with more keyframe data than having to rely on the splines. It's just easier for my brain to understand what the hell's going on. So as we frame through, I think by frame 5, the ball seems like it's moving too low. So I'll insert a key and just scoot that up. Like so. So this will give me more hang time, and then I'll have a faster in between before the bounce. Now, since the ball is bouncing here, I don't want it to slow down. I'll go one frame before, insert a key, and I'll scoot that up. And then one frame after, it's a little too low to the ground, so I'll scoot that up. These splines are going to look kind of weird, but trust in the process. So how do you make the hang time feel good? I like to go a couple frames before the hang time. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe up to here. Set a key, bring that up, so I'm favoring the apex of that arc. And because this is happening 4 frames before, I have to do that after as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Copy that value and paste it. And then adjust these Bezier handles. 1, 2, 3. Go to that key before the down, move it up. I know you can do this better with weighted tangents, but I am definitely not a fan of them because I feel like the before and after, the spacing will look exactly the same on the Translate Y, and I like to design and craft the positions myself with actual keyframes. Like this is higher than this one. Gives a nice little check mark. Okay, so now how many frames should we go? 1, 2, 3. I think that should be okay. Set a key here, scoot that up. So we're favoring the up here. Because we're doing that 3 frames before, we should do that 3 frames after. 1, 2, 3. Copy, paste. Rotate this dude here. 1 frame before the down. Set a key, scoot that up. 1 frame after, scoot this up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, let's go 1, 2. Set a key here, scoot that. 2 frames after the apex, 1, 2, copy, paste. Eventually you'll notice that this becomes really mechanical in your workflow, but it'll make it look super rad. 1 frame before, scoot that up. 1 frame after, scoot that up. Okay, so now we're in dribble territory. 1 frame after the bounce, we're up. So 1 frame before the apex, we're here. Copy, paste that over here. Might as well copy, paste that one and bring it over here. And because we're on ones, you don't need to change these Bezier handles, but I do because I'm paranoid. Now, even though there's only 2 frames in between these two, I still want to favor my keys because this is giving me a 50% blend, and that's what causes even spacing, and even spacing means there's no acceleration and no deceleration, and no ease in and no ease out, and we don't want that at all. So here we're favoring that apex. Closer on the ups, lower on the downs. We'll just read it better. And then on these dribble frames, because they're happening on ones, I really don't care what they're doing, so we can leave it as is. Now what does that look like? Cool. So now the issue that I'm seeing is the rotations. We'll click on the rotates, go back to the graph editor and see what's going on here. I probably need to do 2 things. Grab the ending and just scoot that up a bit. And then you grab that Bezier handle on the first one and just tone it down ever so slightly. Sure, that's not too bad, I guess. Alright. I know I said I like to use the arc tracker on here. I'm not sure why I turned it off. I actually want to see all the frames too, so I'm going to hit that. There we go. Cool. I think during this moment here, I feel like I'm not favoring my keys enough. So maybe I have to grab this, scoot that up. I might have to go one frame back, like so. Tone these down. I feel like the hang time on these bounces are a little odd. So I just want to reshape them a bit. And remember, anytime you're setting down keyframes, you shouldn't accept the fact that these are golden and you can move on with your life. Sometimes you have to go in and re-edit some keys or fix up some timing issues. And if there's whole sections that are not working, you just have to go in and destroy them and start again. And usually rebuilding will make your animation just read a lot better. Okay, cool. I think I'm done fiddling around with the spacing of my hang times. So they look like this right now. Let's hit play. Cool. Love it. Let's go into squash and stretch land. So the cool thing about this rig, like I said earlier, let me go perspective here, is that they have this red controller that moves the squash and stretch. And that's super important because as we're traversing, that squash and stretch angle is going to change. When I'm squashing, it's not going to be a vertical squash over here. It's not going to be like this. It has to follow the trajectory of the ball, which means I need to take the red controller and just tilt it a little bit that way. Hit S to key it. And here you're going to frame by frame this part. So once I hit the down on frame 9, I should zero out the red circle. So the squash and stretch controller is right above. And then when you go one frame before, just make sure that angle is still pointing towards that trajectory. From the past, we bounce, and then afterwards we tilt it towards the new arc over here. And then we just kind of watch it frame by frame, still favoring that angle. And during this hang time part, I'm going to rotate it the other way. I'm going to keep it that way up until the down where we zero it out. And then after the bounce, we rotate it towards the new one, and then you just rinse and repeat. So as we go through that hang time, we rotate the other way. One frame before the down, same thing. Get to the down, zero it out. Like I said, very mechanical, but super necessary. Rotate the other way. Here's the down, so one frame before. Give it a little wiggle towards the previous arc, zero it out, new angle. At this point, I think there's not going to be any more squash and stretch. Let me see. Yeah, probably not. Because you're not going to be squashing and stretching every single time. You're only really doing it because the ball's pretty high up. And once you hit the ground, you squash, get out of it, squash again, gets less and less and less. Just like the apexes of these bounces that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, the squash and the stretch is also going to get smaller and smaller and smaller through time. So probably by frame 45, you don't even need it anymore. So I'm going to delete frame 46, just keep it zeroed out after the fact. Now we can go in and start building in squash and stretch. So squash and stretch needs to be felt. It's not something that should be seen at all. As an example, we don't want to have just a key on frame 1 and then on frame 8 before the bounce, you don't want to stretch like crazy because the computer is going to interpolate that data and it's just going to look really elasticy and weird. So in order to feel it and not see it, you have to really control that spacing. For me, I like to work backwards. On the squash frame, we squash. One frame before, we stretch. One frame after, we stretch. And you want to make sure that you're preserving the volume. You don't want to squash the ball like that. The ball's default scale is this. So this is like crazy, crazy. You'd want to keep it relative to whatever this shape is. Preserving the volume is really important. What I like to do is to make sure that the ball stays a ball for as long as I can, and then when I need to stretch it, I'll do it on really fast motion to hide it. And I think during this hang time, because the ball isn't really moving much, you see how it's deforming already? That's kind of crazy. So I think I'll keep it at 0. So we're not stretching yet up until we start to accelerate even more. And that's where you can hide it. And if you really want to be crazy with it, because we're playing with this on ones, you can bend your Bezier that way. So we're not easing out into the stretch, we're actually accelerating all the way through it. And then we squash. Because this is happening on ones, we really don't care what that Bezier handle's doing. And then here, once we're stretched, we need to get back to default ball form as fast as possible. 1, 2, 3. Let's try 3 frames. Let's zero it out. Cool. And here I'm going to tilt it towards the zeroed out key so that we're not easing into it, we're just moving right through it. And now we're back into ball form. And now it's just rinse and repeat. We want to stay in this realm for a little longer, probably up until here. Copy paste that 0 key. 1 frame before the impact, give it a little bit of a stretch, and we change that Bezier handle like that. We squash the ball, and then 1 frame after we stretch the ball. 1, 2, 3. I think 3 frames feels good. We zero out, and then we change the Bezier handle here. Cool. Rinse and repeat. It's all mechanical, like I said. 1, 2, 3. Cool. So I'm going to squash here. Stretch 1 frame before. Stretch 1 frame after. Fix these Bezier handles. 1, 2. Okay, so now we're getting closer and closer, so we're not going to spend a lot of time to get to 0. Here we're doing it in 2 frames after the stretch. 1, 2. Let's copy paste it on 42. Keep it at 0. On the impact, we squash. A little bit of squash, a little bit of stretch. 1 frame after. I think we're done squashing and stretching here, aren't we? But I do want to resolve it. I might need 1 more little red circle anim for the stretch frame, and then maybe after frame 53 we don't need to have it squash and stretch anymore. Like I said before, you know, when you're setting keys, you have to be okay with changing your mind and just deleting stuff. You know, like I said this before, animation takes a long time, and sometimes you change your mind halfway through your animation, and that's okay. Sometimes it's necessary to do that so that you can create even better pieces of animation. And you never notice that either until you are getting your hands dirty in the Maya file and realize, oh, I just need to add this little thing and things will look way better. So here, adding a little stretch frame on 46, and then I'm just going to get out of it quickly, like on 2 frames, 1, 2. Zero out. Change those Bezier handles again. Okay, so now there should be no more squash and stretch anymore. Let's see what that looks like right now. We turn off this dude. Okay, one thing I need to fix is the diminishing returns of the squash and stretch. You can see here that this is not bad, but then this one is pretty small, and then this one actually it got bigger, which is pretty wild. I don't know why I did that. I'm going to scoot this up a little bit and scoot this down. So it looks like this deformation is smaller than these deformations. And here, same thing, go smaller. And then here, go even smaller. Now what does that look like? It's pretty subtle. A little too subtle for me, so we're gonna scoot that up quite a bit. Which means I need to scoot these up a bit. Okay, let's watch. Now there is one thing you might have noticed, is that the squash and stretch frames feel a little stroby, and that's pretty much exactly what's happening. The spacing is now a little bit different from when we didn't have any squash and stretch. So I will look at the distance between these two keys and those two keys just to see, like, okay, we're accelerating, but then this feels like a pop, so what do? I would grab this key and move it down just to make this feel a little bit better. Strobing happens when spacing is just like way too out of whack. Now we're trying to make sure that it doesn't feel like it's slowing down as it hits the ground, so it's a delicate balance. Then we go this way. Is this strobing? That is definitely strobing. So we move it down. We just course correct. When you're doing stuff like this really minute spacing work, try to flip your keys and scrub like how I'm doing right now by holding the Alt key and period and comma, just to watch the spacing and see if that cleans up any of the weird issues. That's not bad. That's feeling better. Okay, so if we hit play, not bad. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Okay, so I think the rolling needs to be addressed. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Luckily, everything before the bounces end looks pretty good. So let's clean up this part. I think we need more time again, so let's grab this dude on the translates and move it another 4 frames. And working with 2s, 4s, and 8s just really helps my brain understand like how I'm spacing things out, because if I just start randomly moving things by feeling, I feel like I'm not too confident in my ability to choose like how much time needs to be done. Working that way just makes my brain understand, you know, if I need more time, then there's like a specific number of frames I can use to get there, and if I need less time, then I can do that instead of just picking arbitrary numbers and getting lost and confused. So that feels pretty good. Going from 69 to 109. Now we need to clean up the translates for this. And I can't just stop here though. I can't just roll to a stop and call it a day. There needs to be some residual motion, I feel, where as the ball comes to a stop, there's still that little slight of potential energy in there that needs it to rotate a little bit back and then come to a stop. So we could probably do that by frame 29. I'm just giving myself an extra 20 frames here. Just boop, scooting it over ever so slightly back to the left. And one thing a lot of people don't do is add dead time after the animation's done. When the ball comes to a stop, it's going to be watched on loop. And so it'll be a little distracting on the final frame of your animation. The ball stops moving and then all of a sudden it jumps to the left. It's going to be really distracting. So give yourself some dead time. Probably like, I don't know, 8 to 12 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's try that out. Boop, 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 boop. And now we're going into super duper nitpicking territory. I'm going to zoom in on the frame before the rollback. Scoot that a bit. I want to make sure that this energy that's happening here is continuing and even going past its original endpoint as it rolls into the next keyframe. I'm going to move it down a bit though because it feels a bit much. Okay, that part doesn't feel too bad. Now it's just the ending part right here. Maybe this is too much, so we need to bump this up. We're really playing with subtlety here in the spacing. Scoot this up even more. If I need more time, then I need more time, so let's go frame 141. Maybe this needs an extra 2 frames. the slowdown. Let's go into the rotations now and see what's going on here. I like to make sure that those keys are on top of one another, so here's the rotation. Let's scoot that over so they're lined up with my translates. And now we have to get super close here. I like to use 2D pan zoom so I'm not messing around with my camera. If you hit the / that's above the enter key, you'll notice down here it'll say 2D pan zoom. If you hold it down and hold right click with your mouse, you can zoom in. Middle mouse will pan it around, and it's a nice way to just get really tight in your camera and make sure you can really analyze what's going on in your scene. At the moment, we're getting into this weird frictionless motion where the ball's translating, but it's not rotating enough. It almost feels like you're rolling a ball on top of ice, and it's just moving, but not rotating. So during this section, we have to be really meticulous on how this is rolling. And here it's slowing down. That's probably due to the fact that the Bezier handle is flat. So we crank it, and then we move it down. We want to continue that motion. This is where framing through your animation will really help you see, like, okay, the ball's translating. Is it also rotating enough? If it wasn't, like, this is obvious. It's not rotating at all. So make sure you're framing through your shot, watching the translations, using the peripheral of your eye to look at that center line. Let's turn this off actually. And just see, like, am I rotating enough? If the answer is no, grab it, move it. Okay, so in this section, as it starts to slow down a lot, we're gonna have to get even more meticulous. So this is why I'm a huge fan of just setting keys. I know everything from 69 to 101. This feels okay. It seems pretty readable. If not, I can always grab this and scoot it more. But now it's this section that we really need to clean up. So I'm just watching the edge of the ball to see what's going on. This is the moment before it starts to roll back, so I think I'll set a key on 117. Delete that. And I'm just going to play around with the spacing here. Make sure that this part is reading correctly. As I watch it, there's a moment right here where the rotations are taking over from the translations. I need to reduce the motion here on 117 by a lot, like that much. And this is one of the harder parts, I think, of the bouncing ball, is to really sell this subtle roll. And now we start to roll backwards here. So we will rotate that way. Reduce the spacing here. I'm watching the translates and using my peripheral vision on this big yellow spot to see if it's rotating enough, and I don't think it is. So we rotate it even more. Seems like it's moving quite a bit, so we'll tone it down. It's a huge balancing act whenever you're animating. You just have to play and try to find that moment that actually reads well. It doesn't look too bad. Feels pretty subtle to me. Okay, let's check it out. Hide the controllers. Go to the frame 1. There's a little bit of a click, like boop, right there. Boop. Click, right there. So we'll have to fix that. It might need more time now that I think about it. I'll click on the rotations and the translates. I will go here to the graphs, and I want to make sure that I'm protecting everything from 117 and before. I'll insert a key. That way all this is protected. And then here I might just need more time. Maybe another 4 frames. So let's move them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And maybe I need more dead time. Let's see what that's like. It's getting closer, and I think I know one of the reasons why it's not working. We need to do this thing where we are favoring the final key when the ball comes to an end. But in order to do so, we need to get there maybe 60 to 80% of the way, just a couple frames earlier. So how many frames then do I need in order to favor that last keyframe? Let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Either 8 or 10. I'm gonna say... I'll say 8. Let's just see what happens. So remember frame 125. We'll go to frame 135, and I'm just gonna go backwards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 frames. And I'm doing this without using the tweeners on AnimBot. Normally I just hit a button, but you can do this even with default Maya. We're basically saying, hey Maya, 5 frames before the final key, whatever that position is, give me that, key it. Set a key there, and then take that key to frame 125 that we talked about earlier, the 8 frames after. So now we're getting there faster, and then we're still taking 10 frames to ease out. And that 8 frames might have felt too fast. But I did say maybe 10 frames, so we scoot that 2 frames later. And if that feels too clicky, what's great is that I can just say, hey, you know what? Instead of frame 127, grab frame 126, middle mouse drag it, key it on 127. And now we are softening the blow by taking whatever value was on 126, and now it's on 127. So let's see what that looks like. Hide the controllers, hit play. Yay. So this took me about an hour to do. Try it yourself. If this video helped you, let me know. And if there's any more stuff you want to see, leave it in the comments below, and I will see what I can do. Oh boy, this camera is way too close to my face. So where have I been? Animate Better was created 7 years ago, and all of a sudden, new video. What the hell? I didn't do anything within the last 7 years, only because when the channel was created, I was working at Leica. I was a facial animator for 2 of their films, and I thought, you know what? I could be doing this teaching thing on YouTube. Seems pretty easy. There's a lot of bad content out there. I feel like I know what I'm talking about. Let me try it. But clearly, I knew absolutely nothing. Right after I made the YouTube channel, I got headhunted to come work in Montreal, Quebec for a feature film with On Animation Studios called The Playmobil Movie. Right after that, I went to Real Effects to work on Scoob, The Ugly Dolls movie, Back to the Outback, and Rumble. Then moved back to the States, went to Disney, worked on Encanto, Strange World, and Wish. And now I feel like I actually know how to animate. So much so that I now teach at Animation Mentor. And there's me. I don't know why Spider-Verse is on there. I didn't have the chance to work on that movie. But yeah, here's my mentor page if you ever want to take a look. So my plan is to make more tutorials and demos in the near future. Right now we're moving house, and I'm building a home office to facilitate this new jump into the YouTube space. So I'll actually have like proper set dressing and cooler stuff to see instead of just wall. But anyway, yeah, that's about it. Let me know what else you want to see. Bye!